Some late game heroics by the Buccaneers defense cannot bail them out in this one. They fall to 6-3, 28-23, your final score against the New England Patriots. We are taking your calls and breaking down everything there is to talk about this Buccaneers performance fresh out of the bye week on today's Cannon Fire Podcast.
I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with the head. Intercepted. 30. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers fall in front of the home crowd to the New England Patriots, who advance their record on the year to 8-2. And don't let the box score fool you. Although the Buccaneers did have 371 total yards of offense, I think a lot of that is really what was responsible in garbage time here at the end of the game. For the most part, this was, from an offensive perspective, an incredibly frustrating afternoon for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know it's going to be hard to react this soon to the game and not focus on all the things that went wrong. There were some things that did go right for the Buccaneers today. Another takeaway for this defense. And again, late game heroics. We got a red zone interception from Tyke Smith. His first interception since last December. Almost a full calendar year. But it's just not enough to bail the Buccaneers out at the end of this game. The Patriots had plenty of explosive plays, and I think that's where the conversation in this game is going to get really weird, because we can highlight these explosive plays, but outside of the explosive plays, I thought this Bucs defense did a decent job of handling New England, handling Drake May, and really, with that Tyke Smith interception, I thought that was one of the only reasons this game wasn't separated by a larger margin than only 5 points. I think the scoreboard is going to tell you that it was a 5-point game, but the Buccaneers probably should have lost this one by double digits. And I think the conversation starts with the ineptitude on the offensive side of the ball. We're taking calls, 305-224-1968. The meeting ID on your screen, 747-973-0150. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew. Welcome back to the Cannon Fire Podcast. It's been a little bit. We talked to you guys on the game preview. Unofficially, we joined the Foxborough fellas to preview the game. And then we are back here after the bye week. And it's a shame because Todd Bowles said all week that you don't want to be that team. You don't want to come out after the bye week and come out flat. And that's kind of what happened. But the interesting part, when we break down the offense for the day, the interesting part is how they came out of the gate, because you wouldn't think after that first drive the Buccaneers take a quick 7-0 lead, and at that point, you do not think that this game is going to play out the way that it does. Baker hits Acha Ibuka a couple of times. He finds the end zone. They run the ball pretty well between Sean Tucker and Rachaad White. Nobody was expecting anything explosive, but if you can run the ball well situationally, they had a critical third down conversion on that first scoring drive. Like, that was a textbook start for this Buccaneers offense, and the wheels just kind of fell off after that. Amazement 717 with the $9.99 super chat. The double possession to me was the difference when the Pats scored before halftime and then scored again coming out of the locker room. That's why I hate getting the ball first. Penalty on Shepard was costly too. That's a very good point. The Pats at that time made it, 21-10? Or was it 24-10? It was more than a two-possession game. They scored at the end of the first half, opened things up in the second half, and they were able to score. And the Bucs really just couldn't dig themselves out of the hole at that point. I don't think they ever got the lead back. Baker Mayfield on the day, 28 for 43, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2 of those touchdowns to Tez Johnson, another one to Acha Ibuka. Tons of rookies scoring today. even for New England. I'm sure that's going to be a record. We'll have some stats coming out at some point. But Baker Mayfield, I thought, was up and down. You know, again, after that first drive, it's very, very hard for me to believe that this offense just kind of fell off a cliff the way that it did. Because it's normally the opposite, right? You start to get your fireworks in the second and third quarter. Takes them a little bit to warm up, got to find their bearings. And I think a lot of us expected that after the bye week, it would be more of the same with a slow start. They came right out, put 7 points on the board. And it was just ineptitude after that. It was 6 plays on that opening drive. They go 65 yards. Baker was getting the ball out of his hands quickly. Early on, Josh Grizzard was getting a little bit creative. I mean, we saw 2 different wide receiver jet sweeps today. One to Sterling Shepard. The other one to Cameron Johnson. We saw him attempt his own version of a Philly special. The Bucs basically ran the Philly special, and Acha just didn't throw the ball. He was kind of the guy with the read there to decide if he wanted to tuck it and run and chuck it to Baker, and he comes up short on that 2-point conversion. So, I thought at times Grizzard was in his bag, and then I don't know. I think the offense really started to sputter. If you want to look at a turning point, very early on in this game, I think it was still the first quarter, offensive guard Ben Bredesen suffered a hamstring injury. And I think that, honestly, was kind of the beginning of the end. Because Mike Jordan comes back into the game. Dan Feeney started again at right guard for the Bucs. So at this point, you've got Dan Feeney at right guard. Mike Jordan comes back in at left guard, who has been struggling. Graham Barton in the interior, been struggling. I thought Dan Feeney was not great against pass protection today. Graham Barton, unfortunately, had some more matchups he lost today. Mike Jordan was brutal, man. And going back to Baker Mayfield, his performance throwing the football, I thought there were a couple of plays. I thought more than once today, you could see that pressure closing in the pocket, really coming from the interior of that Buccaneers offensive line, giving up quickly. Baker tried to step up into his throw a few times and just really couldn't step all the way into it because he's running into his offensive lineman. I don't know. It was incredibly frustrating. I think that outside of a few series, though, this is going to be one of those. It's going to be one of those play calling games for Josh Grizzard that everyone's gonna break down for the rest of the week, and I don't blame them. I think it was one of his lesser performances. Running the football, though, again, it was interesting. Bucs had over 100 yards rushing on the ground. Sean Tucker, the first running back in the NFL this season to run for over 50 yards against New England. He had 9 carries, 53 yards. Nobody found the end zone. Rachaad White, 10 carries for 38. Cameron Johnson had 1 on the jet sweep, and Sterling Shepard had 1 for 11 on the jet sweep. I'm not going to say that it was just an all-out terrible day for Josh Grizzard. I think player execution has to step in at some point, but the injuries are starting to pile up, man. And with Ben Bredesen, they say it's a hamstring. They ruled him out pretty quickly. He was doubtful to begin with, and then they ruled him out. So with it being a hamstring, you know he's going to be missing multiple weeks. And I think what really sucks right now about the lack of rhythm on the offense is that they're going to have to figure things out on the road next week against a Bills team who came up empty in Miami. And then, of course, after that, they have the Rams, which we all know is a favorable matchup, of course, for this Buccaneers offense. So it's not how you wanted to start coming out of the bye week. It is by no means the end of the world here at 6-3 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Looking around the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons lost in Berlin this morning to the Indianapolis Colts. That game decided in overtime. And the Saints did everybody a favor, believe it or not. They took down the red-hot Carolina Panthers, the Fighting Dave Canales. Dave Canales is. We've heard them called. I think some of the overreactions that we are going to see this week about this Buccaneers loss are just going to remind me to remind everybody else to keep things in perspective. And I think that all opinions here are important. I think all perspectives are important, but 6-3 does not mean the season is over. But what I will say, without overreacting, I think this is important too. And again, I want to hear your takes as well. Call in. I need somebody to talk to today, especially after ending my weekend like this. I think what's important here, and you can take this whatever way you want, but the Buccaneers now have 3 losses on the season, and the 3 losses they have on the season are to 3 really good teams. So you can take that one of 2 ways. You can say that, yes, the Bucs are a good team. They have a lot of injuries, and they're continuing to try and overcome injuries. And sometimes in games like this, you're going to feel the effect of those injuries. And you just lose to good teams. It's okay to lose to good teams. But you can also take it, and you can also say, well, the Buccaneers now have a trend of losing to good teams. And, like, how far is that going to get you once you start talking postseason and you start talking Super Bowl? And how many games can you win later in the year? 2-point conversions. The Bucs failed on a 2-point conversion today. I feel like playoff winners, teams that have aspirations for a Super Bowl, can execute on a 2-point conversion a little bit better. And maybe that's trivial. Maybe that's something people want to get hung up on. Oh, it doesn't decide if they're a good team or not. No, it doesn't. But I feel like it's some of the details and some of the nuances that it just seems like they're lacking. 3rd down execution today wasn't great. Early on in this game, it was terrible. I think they were like 1 for 8 on 3rd downs coming out of the gate. Overall, they finished 5 for 13. New England wasn't much better. The Bucs actually had a better ratio. So New England went 5 for 14 on 3rd down. The Bucs were 5 for 13. But again, you think about these explosive plays for New England, and that's where the conversation gets a little frustrating. Putting into perspective the defensive performance today, we will get to that, I promise. But outside of those huge plays, these 60, 70-plus yarders, I thought they held them in check. And I really did think that if the Buccaneers got something going on the offensive side of the ball, they would be able to at least match the pace of New England. Even with the explosive plays, I thought there was ample opportunity for them to not only match the pace, but just try and do something with the lead that they had early on in this game. They had a 7-0 lead, and then that was kind of it. 305-228-1968. The meeting IT on your screen, 747-973-0150. Just going through my notes here. Looking for more fun stuff to talk about. Let's talk about the rookie sensation. I mean, Acha Ibuka. I want to talk about the good things because, again, if I just kind of piss myself off and then get off of this podcast and then that's the end of my weekend, I would like to, I don't know, consider this a therapy session for all of us. I want to talk about Acha Ibuka. Led the team in receiving today. Had another big-time performance. 6 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. He has 6 touchdowns so far this season. I think the most by any rookie wide receiver in a Buccaneers uniform since Mike Evans in that many games. So I'm excited to see him continue to contribute on this offense. Hopefully once they get healthy. It seems like a cruel joke at this point. But if and when they get healthy, maybe they can do some more damage. Our first call of the show. I appreciate you relieving me in this time of need. From the 813, who's this?
Yo, what's up, man? It's BK giving you a call, man. Watched the game out here in Jacksonville today, and yeah, that looked about right today. To be honest with you, I'll say this, man. It's a tough loss because this game was so winnable. However, if you dissect this a little further, man, after that first series, which was the best series of the game, when we lose Bredesen to the hamstring, and he's ruled out after that first series, that offensive line did not look the same for the rest of the game.
Nope.
I mean, there were plays where I'm watching where you got all pro Tristan Wirfs not even getting a hand on anybody, because they're running stunts with against Michael Jordan. And I don't know. I never played offensive line, so I can't tell you whether or not, how impactful that is or what the relationship is from there, and not having those two guys play together much, you know what I mean? But yeah, it was bad. It was very bad. And I also want to say, when it comes down to it, for the last couple of weeks, I've really been asking the same question. And when the game's on the line, when the games matter and things happen, these are the things that I'm going to look for. And it is, where do we scheme to get guys open? Like, clearly the GM made it loud and clear. We're not getting a pass rusher and we're not getting wide receivers in here. So who we have is who we have to work with. And when you're in games like this against playoff seasons and your front office says, we're going to stick with our guys, i.e. my guys, the guys that I drafted, okay, then when you go into battle like this, sometimes this is what that looks like. When you don't go get the extra help and you don't go get, the edge rusher to help out, on the edge, now you've got, some breakout runs on the outside. And then on the wide receiver wise, you're stuck with one wide receiver and a bunch of talented skill guys, but not necessarily complete ball players as it relates to that level to match up against the ones of a great playoff team. So I think overall, man, with that mindset being said, like, this is what we're gonna have to work with against the great teams because we're not healthy. And as long as we don't continue to scheme open these players, they're not going to have any advantage. If you're asking Baker Mayfield to go out here and to look for 3-4 reads down, we're not going to get the pass rush is going to get there because we're hurt at offensive line again. And if you're asking who I thought did decent when he needed to, but Baker wasn't accurate today. Baker showed us at this point this year who he is this year. At times he's going to be clutch every time, but at times he's not going to be on par. He's going to miss a couple of throws that you wish he could get back. And that's just where we ended up at, and that's what we ended up with today. And unfortunately, that's where we are. And until we get healthy completely, we start scheming, we're going to end up in the same type of predicaments, even if we make it into the playoffs. And I'll sit back and I'll listen to that. Go Bucs.
BK, great call, my friend. Go Bucs. We will talk to you soon. Talking about Josh Grizzard, again, going back to that performance for the Buccaneers offense today, I know that people are very disappointed, let down by some of the play calling today. And again, that's perfectly fine. You're allowed to be. But I think that the realistic part of the situation, like BK had mentioned, the Bucs are facing great teams right now, and they're doing it without a lot of players. They faced the Eagles, and they were without a good amount of players. They faced the Lions, and they were without a lot of players. They faced New England, and they were without a lot of players. Now, I am not making excuses, but going back to my main point, the realistic part of it is that from a play calling perspective, if you're Josh Grizzard and you're heading into the season with the expectation that you're going to have all of these weapons available to you, you're going to have Mike Evans, you're going to have Chris Godwin, you're going to have Bucky Irving, you'll have a healthy and cohesive offensive line, the same starters that you had last season. And I'm going to bring this term up again and again because it's my favorite quote of the season. He got kind of tossed a shit sandwich from week 1. Our starting center is playing left tackle, and he didn't look good. He's moved back to center, and he doesn't look good. They can't figure out a sustainable guard. At left guard, we had to play Mike Jordan today because Ben Bredesen, who has been one of our most consistent offensive linemen this season, a guy who can play center if Barden had to be moved or reconsidered or hurt. You lose Ben Bredesen now for a couple of weeks because of an extra point. You play Mike Jordan, who was brutal. You play Dan Feeney, who was not good in pass protection. A lot of this interior is coming to Baker. Or I'm sorry, a lot of this pressure on Baker is coming from the interior. I'm going to give myself a brain aneurysm. I can't even talk right now. I think that there is a certain level of this Buccaneers offense that relies on just guys making plays. Having a Mike Evans in the red zone. The ability to have a Mike Evans on the field with a Chris Godwin and a Acha Ibuka and a Sterling Shepard and potentially a Tez Johnson. Christian Gonzalez had a decent day against Acha Ibuka today. I know Ibuka had led the team in catches and found the end zone. It was a back and forth battle between those guys. But like when you have Mike Evans and you have Chris Godwin available to you, even just one or the other, it's not like he can pay attention to Acha Ibuka the entire game. They can't double team him the entire game. You're missing functional pieces and your impact players on a good football team. A great football team is not going to be great without their great players. And right now the Buccaneers are missing one too many great players. And yeah, like Ben Bredesen, I don't think a lot of people would say he's great on the same level as like a Mike Evans, but he's damn sure better than Mike Jordan or Dan Feeney at this rate, with all due respect to both of those guys. I think that Grizzard is handcuffed. And yes, he did not call a good game today, but I think some of that is how much can you really do without your guys, without your playmakers, your world beaters, if you will. The Buccaneers have a lack of world beaters right now on offense, and they just can't find any rhythm. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, really all three phases of the ball today, I think that you could say couldn't find a rhythm. We talk about this defense, and yes, it is true that the Tyke Smith interception is the only reason this game probably wasn't determined by a larger margin. But I think what was most concerning about it was how well New England ran the football. And it wasn't like they got creative in running the football. I mean, they ran the football directly at Tampa Bay. And there hasn't been a team this season who has even attempted to do that. And it really paid off for them. So I'm hoping that that doesn't become a trend for other teams to pick up on. I certainly hope it doesn't become a new weakness for this Buccaneers defense. Because there were guys on the defensive side of the ball who I thought played pretty well today. But the run game was I mean, damn, dude, hopefully an outlier. Henderson had 14 carries, 147 yards, and 2 touchdowns. One of them was the dagger at the end of the game. Rolf, call in, man. We've got the number and the meeting ID at the bottom of your screen, 305-224-1968. The meeting ID will scroll by in just a second. But Trevion Henderson had a ridiculous day running the football, and he pretty much did it by himself, and it didn't seem like the Bucs had much of an answer for him. Zach with an interesting point in chat here. He says, I believe Baker is playing more hurt than we think he is. His mobility in the pocket is clearly not the same, and it's the only real thing that explains why he isn't running. I think it's definitely an interesting point because by no means was Baker going to be 100% healthy after just a week off. But the quote that he gave CBS was that he was playing at around 50% against Detroit and New Orleans just because of the leg injury, the oblique. So I'm curious. Like, how hurt he really is playing. I think that's a valid point. I would hope I would hope that he's more healthy than he was before the bye, but like how much healthier can he actually get? That's a really good point. So something to monitor moving forward. Chris Godwin is an interesting case as well because he's dealing with that fibula, which is the foot injury. And it's not even the same injury that he was nursing, an entire year's worth of rehab to come back from. I know I'm not the only person to say this. I know I'm not the first person to say this either. But I definitely think at this rate, Mike Evans is going to be back in this offense before Chris Godwin. Evolve says the turning point to me was the 3rd and 3 forced pass to Cade Otton when it looked like White was open on the right side. Should have thrown that quick pass. It seemed like a couple of times today Baker was looking for a big play downfield, and by the time he took the check down, it had gone away, right? The defense had honed in on it. They had known they'd taken away all the options, and he wasn't going to make a play downfield. But I'm curious just how much New England took plays away down the field for them today. Intermediate routes, some of the check down stuff, some of the short stuff. Here's an interesting statistic. He played fairly well. So on intermediate window, which is 10 to 19 yard completions, Baker was 10 of 13 for 165 yards and 3 touchdowns. That statistic courtesy of Bucs Juice on Twitter. Go check him out. Great stuff. I'm curious, the Ibuka thing, right? Christian Gonzalez doing a good job of clamping down on Acha Ibuka. I think taking away downfield options was a huge part of that. There were a couple of sacks today where Baker very clearly held onto the ball too long as well. Again, whether that's trying to just make a play downfield that isn't there or extend the play with his legs, he wasn't as decisive as he has been in the past, and a couple of the sacks today were definitely on him. Let's get to our next call from the 520, I think. Who is this?
It's Josh, Tucson again, baby.
Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Couple things. I think you've said most of it, but I mean, we're 6-3, and I hear a lot of like the fire bowls and shit on social media, and I just like we could be, and I'm not saying we're just playing our division, we're playing the league, but we could be the inconsistent Panthers, the hopeless Saints, or the shitbird Falcons. And we're not. We're decimated by injuries. And then we lost another offensive lineman today. And I mean, we just can't criticize the OC as much as we are. And Baker, he's working with bare minimum. I will say that Tez Johnson is legit. I love that guy, and I'll leave it at that. I'll sit back and listen.
Hell yeah, man. Tez Johnson, great point there. I love the fact that he's come around as much as he has in this Buccaneers offense. A guy who, after the draft, people were excited about Tez in the preseason, but I think that at some level, you have to be realistic. And a lot of people were saying, like, oh, is he even going to make the team? He's going to have to be a returner. He's going to have to do it on special teams. And, we forecasted some injuries for this wide receiver room, but Tez Johnson has absolutely stepped up. And, yeah, maybe it was a garbage time touchdown, but I don't care. 2 touchdowns today for Tez Johnson. 4 receptions for 42 yards. He showcased more ability today to make some guys miss. He's just a good player. He's just a good football player. And I think that, again, we talk about how handcuffed this offense is. They're missing good football players. Like it's gonna, it's going to affect you more against great teams than it is the bottom feeders. But we talked about that trend earlier. You can take this whatever way you want to take it. I am just throwing it out there. The Buccaneers have 3 losses now to 3 teams who are well above 500. Can the Bucs play good teams? I'm sure they can. Can they beat those good teams if they're healthy? That's a conversation within itself. So, again, take it whichever way you want to. But I think the overreactions to the Buccaneers' 3rd loss of the season, here in the month of November, mind you, are going to be pretty telling. So have some fun with that as we wade the waters of social media this week coming up. But Josh, thank you for your call, my friend. Great stuff here. Thank you to our people in chat hanging out with us tonight. I know it is brutal after a Buccaneers loss, but everyone in here showing some support. Brutal as Bucs. Zachary Burgett. I'm not sure which one of those was correct, but my apologies if I mispronounced it. The great Leadus Productions. It's Ed. Yeah, we could also be 2-6 right now. You talk about the teams kind of flipping a coin here with 1-possession games. The Buccaneers very well could be 2-6 right now. Bill Camporis, Day Diggs hanging out with us, Tyler Lesnick, Evolve Official, Timothy Ward, Amazement 717, can't forget with the super chat earlier, and of course, Dub. We could also be 8-1, says Gaming Wizard. Listen, quit making so much sense, all right? Drake May had a pretty good day throwing the football. 16 for 31, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Mac Hollins had 6 catches for 106 yards. I think what's interesting is that Kyle Williams, 1 reception for 72 yards. You take away that play, and Drake May is 15 for 30 with 198 yards on the day. 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And I know it's like if, ands, or buts, so I don't want to sit here and say that if you do this, but it just further pushes the discussion of like, where is the defense at really? And I hope that this is, we've been using the word outlier more, which scares me. But I hope that this is an outlier performance in terms of explosive plays, because we just really haven't seen too many teams do that to Tampa Bay. We talk about the pass rush. I want to highlight that as well. Some really good points being brought up in the chat. Zach, how about Chris Braswell? Too soon to consider a bust or no? He never does anything. I don't think it's too soon. Dare I say it? I think that maybe it's too soon to say bust overall, but he's going to have to bust his hump to make me and a lot of other people think that he's anything else but just a dude at this point. He just looks like a dude. And I think that from a pass rush perspective, I know that Hassan Reddick is still going to be hurt for an unidentified amount of time. We love how coy this team is with their injuries. Yaya Diaby's been playing well, but like Anthony Nelson isn't going to play like he did against New Orleans every week, and we know that. Chris Braswell is just a dude. And that's where the trade deadline conversation creeps back in as well. For a lot of the people who were really pushing the button for the Buccaneers to go after an edge rusher or some kind of reinforcements on the defensive side of the ball, I don't think it would have fixed their issues. I don't think there were any favorable contracts available to them. I know that you kind of have to play the field and you have to decide on if that rental player is worth it, right? The contract situation for a guy like Jalen Phillips, who went to Philadelphia, he's in a contract season. And I don't know how well equipped the Bucs would be to handle his contract next season. So is it going to be worth it to potentially give up a 3rd or a 4th round pick to go after that guy, to only have him in a Bucs uniform for, at best, 10, 11 games? And then he's on to the next team. So I kind of understand that there weren't really any Band-Aid issues there that were going to fix it. Like Logan Wilson, we talk about the linebacker. People wanted a linebacker because of Servassier Dennis, who had some rough moments today. But people were pounding the table for a linebacker. Oh, Logan Wilson from Cincinnati can do it. Well, I mean, he couldn't get playing time on a really bad defense behind two other younger linebackers. And I don't know if he would have fixed the Buccaneers' problem at linebacker. I don't know if it would have been worth the investment. But when you do look at, I guess, just the lack of depth here at pass rush in particular, you're going to have to weigh out what you think is more important. I can understand why the Buccaneers want to kind of keep their hands in the pocket here at the end of the deadline, hang on to the picks that they have, because we're talking about contributors for this Buccaneers football team. I thought on defense, Benjamin Morrison had a really rough day. Did not see a lot of Jacob Parrish. He seemed kind of quiet, I guess for better or for worse. But Benjamin Morrison got picked on today. He's a second-round pick. Jacob Parrish, a third-round pick. You know, we talk about giving up a third-round pick for a Jalen Phillips. Outside of today, Jacob Parrish has had a very strong rookie season. That's giving up a Jacob Parrish, who is on your payroll for the next 4 seasons, potentially playing at a starter level. And that's such a low salary that's going to help you build around that guy. You don't want to just give that up to have a guy for 11 games. So I get it. But I think to some degree, whether there were moves to be made or not, I think to some degree not being advantageous of the trade deadline, it may bite them in the butt. It really may. Bucs fan here in chat says it was a team loss today. The offensive line needs to be better. Baker has to make more throws. The wide receivers need to make more catches. Yes, the offense has to put up more points, but the defense got gashed hard on 4 plays. That is a fair point, my friend. Pickle Dog in chat says the issue for every Jacob Parrish is that there is a Chris Braswell. That's also a very true point. I think Chris Braswell a second-round pick as well. So I think Braswell's just a dude, unfortunately. Until he can prove me wrong, I just can't rely on any of the depth in this Buccaneers pass rush to step up. I can't rely on these guys to surprise me anymore because we've reached the point in the season where it just kind of is what it is. Levante David led the team in tackles today. Had 9 tackles. Great day for number 54. Tyke Smith, again, had a big-time red zone interception. He was right behind Levante with 8 tackles. He has been a tackling machine. Zion McCollum had a critical pass breakup today as well. Jamel Dean. I want to talk about Benjamin Morrison, Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, this kind of rotating snaps situation the Bucs have going on. And I want your thoughts on chat as well. These last couple of weeks, we have talked a lot about Todd Bowles and his decision to have Benjamin Morrison and Jamel Dean basically kind of like swap defensive series at outside corner. And the narrative is that, yeah, he wants to keep these guys fresh. And I think that that is more than fair, especially when you look at a player with Jamel Dean's injury history. You want to keep him fresh. You want to keep him on the field, keep him productive. So the big thing there, though, in my opinion, is the best ability is availability. And I think that there were a couple of moments for this Buccaneers defense where they were giving up these third down conversions and they're giving up these chunk plays and these explosive plays. And Jamel Dean's just like not even on the field. Zion McCollum's not on the field because they're rotating in and out with Benjamin Morrison, who Benjamin Morrison in his own right has done more good than bad so far this 2025 season. But he was getting picked on today. And it was very obvious that he was getting picked on. Because whenever Jamel Dean wasn't on the field and Benjamin Morrison was, guess where they were throwing the football? And too many times I thought the Buccaneers were in that situation on a critical third down when you need your playmakers to be on the field. And I think that's going to be on coaching. I think when we praise this defense for taking the ball away, which they did again this week, another positive in the turnover differential for Tampa Bay. You love to see it. That's what winning football teams do. But I don't know if winning football teams consistently take their best players off of the field. And the fact of the matter is, Jamel Dean, even though he's been playing less snaps, has been the Buccaneers' best corner so far this season. I'd argue he's been one of the NFL's best corner so far this season. And doing that with limited snaps is really saying something about his ability. So I think that is going to be interesting to kind of see what kind of perspectives come in here. You look at some of the major differences between the Bucs and a team like the Patriots right now, and number one on that list, even looking at the loss today, is coaching. This is a reflection of coaching. This is a New England Patriots team that has now won 7 games in a row under a first-year head coach in Mike Vrabel. I mean, he's got head coaching chops, you know what I mean? He had some decent squads in Tennessee, and I think the Titans kind of shafted him. I think Vrabel's a likable coach, and I think the Patriots like what he's doing a lot right now. But they are a team that is bought in, they are disciplined, and they're just well coached. They're making the right decisions. They are paying attention to detail. They are doing the little things that you need to do to win a football game like they won today in Tampa. So, I don't think at 6-3 we need to talk about fire Todd Bowles. I'm not saying that. That's not at all where my point is going, but I do think that this is a loss that can definitely be blamed quite a bit on coaching. Player execution plays a huge hand of it, but taking your best players off of the field on critical third downs is I don't know if the players are the ones who decide that they just want to come off of the field. But the Bucs look like a team that came off of their bye week. And that's something that Todd Bowles had preached all week, is you don't want to be that team. And unfortunately, they were. Elijah Roberts, I want to talk more about some rookies, big-time plays from the rookies today. We talked about New England getting a couple of scores from their rookies. The Buccaneers, Ibuka and Tez Johnson finding the end zone 3 times between the two of those players. But I thought Elijah Roberts, he only had 2 tackles and a sack, but he is consistently showing up for this Buccaneers defensive line. And it's a depleted unit without Kalijah Kancey, who's relying more on this rookie playmaker. He's just another contributor in a list of contributors in this Buccaneers 2025 draft class. And that's pretty sweet, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of Elijah Roberts. I thought another decent performance for him. Elijah Simmons had a big-time tackle for loss as well. He's been popping up, making plays. Richard T, though, great point. Hard to win a Super Bowl when you're relying heavily on rookies. Richard T, give me a call, buddy. 305-224-1968. Meeting ID on your screen, 747-973-0150. We'll take a handful more calls before we break this thing down and get out of here. Logan Hall, I thought, had a rough afternoon. Left the game at one point because of an injury scare. Only had 1 tackle on the day, but the phrase that gets thrown around is people movers, man beaters, I guess, up front. And I don't think Logan Hall is that guy. Very much like Chris Braswell, there are times where Logan Hall just looks like another guy out there, and that's not going to help. Big-time pass breakup today for Servassier Dennis. I want to highlight number 8 because, yes, he did miss the running back one time today. But he had a big-time pass deflection on 3rd down, and I thought that was a good enough play in itself to at least get recognition. Christopher Cole with an interesting point in chat. Why was Anthony Nelson covering Stephon Diggs' end-zone coverage? More than once on Sunday, the Buccaneers had Anthony Nelson basically playing like stand-up linebacker next to Levante David, and just sitting in the flat right there, covering the zone. It was a little odd. I don't know if they're expecting him to get an interception again after that pick 6 against New Orleans, but didn't seem like it was a very successful thing for them this week. But a lot of that is in turn because of how creative Todd Bowles wants to get with these pressures. They alluded to it on commentary time and time again. Bowles was wanting to empty the bag on these defensive fronts and trying to mix things up and show Drake May some stuff he hadn't seen before, and he was mostly prepared for it. Let's see who we got here. From the 626, who is this?
What's up, Rhett? It's Richard T from the West Coast.
Richard, how you doing, my friend? It's a Buccaneers loss, but I want to try and keep everybody level-headed. I don't want anybody to overreact. You know what I mean? We are 6-3. We're still a decent team in the NFC. We've got first place in the NFC South for right now. The Panthers lost. The Falcons lost. I know this Buccaneers offense is seems like they're up shit's creek without a paddle right now, but I would really like to see them get things together and win some more games. I hope that this doesn't become a bit of a midseason slump, if you will, kind of a trademark from Todd Bowles that we have seen.
It's kind of hard not to think that right now. I mean, look, at the beginning of the season, looking at this game, this is a game that we were supposed to win. The way that things have played out for Patriots, now kudos to them for turning it around. They're now 8-2.
Yeah.
And the reality is that at this point of the season, Drake May is doing more with less than what Baker has been doing with less. It kind of cancels each other out, and it just feels like it's on the coaching, and the coaching was able to figure out Baker and the offense on what they're trying to do. And maybe, yeah, sure, injuries are to it. Baker hasn't been able to pull his magic, and when he tried, there was someone there. So yeah, it's hard not to feel so upbeat, uninspired at this point right now, because I do feel like the Bucs will win the division. And then at the same time, I feel like we get to the playoffs and we'll be lucky if we get out of the wild card. We keep waiting on players to come back. And it's already been more than half the season for Bucky, and then Luke finally came back. Godwin is still up and down. McMillan all of a sudden has a broken neck. While we're waiting for those players to come out, other players keep falling, like Bredesen today. And now that just throws off all the continuity in the offensive line yet again. So, it's like construction, right? Like, in order to build a good foundation, you need to have in order to build a strong building, you need to have a good foundation. That's the line. And if that's unstable, it's hard for this offense to keep, to be as productive as we want it to be, as we've seen it to be. So, yeah, we got to hang in there, and just hopefully just be optimistic. But let's see what happens. But yeah, just feeling very uninspired right now.
I agree with you, Richard T. I think that, again, there's a lot of phases that the Buccaneers came up short today. You can look at all three phases of the game here. That defensive series, the doubling up, and I know that this got brought up earlier on in the show, but I just want to highlight it again. The ability for New England to go through the gauntlet that they did at the end of that first half with the Stephon Diggs touchdown catch. I mean, that was just one hell of a catch, and that was kind of one of those plays that you make it at the very end of the half, and it almost demoralizes the entire unit. And then you have to come back out in the second half, and unfortunately, they give up another huge play. So it's like, that was the point of seemingly no return, where it felt like they were in a hole that they just weren't going to dig themselves out of. But I think it's difficult because we can have this conversation in circles all day about not having the star power, not having your good players. But I think at the end of the day, on the defensive side of the ball, there are conversations to be had about the talent that they do have. And this was a bad day for the pass rush. I get
feel like
so
we've-
I get so conflicted because we can say all these things, we can nuance the defense, and I still find myself more upset with the offense and their inability to put points on the board more than anything else. It seemed like that despite the shortcomings of the defense, despite the explosive plays that they gave up, like they still played well enough down the stretch to keep us in the game for the offense to have a chance to win it. And they just couldn't do it. And time again, they couldn't do anything with the football.
It's wild. A month ago, Baker goes to Seattle and has only 4 incompletions in that whole game, and since then, he gets 4 incompletions like in one drive. There's just, it just feels like he's been figured out. Him, the offense, the offensive line, the opposing defenses have figured him out. And Grizzard doesn't have the experience to make those adjustments or, just to be more creative to get himself out of there, step out of the comfort zone. Yeah, there's been some creative plays. We've seen that. And then the execution wasn't there. So, I'm with you. Very conflicted on how I feel. I want to be optimistic. A lot of the things that we've been seeing, trending things that we've been seeing that have been impacting the Bucs' offenses, it just continues to happen. So, just kind of feels pretty shitty right now. I still feel like we got our asses beat because of 3 big offensive plays, and because of that, we just really couldn't, like you said, dig ourselves out. So, they say complementary football, and I think in this kind of situation, outside of even special teams, every level complemented each other in like the opposite direction, from a shanked punt or a short punt to the defense not setting the edge and having big plays, and offense inability to drive when it mattered, to keep the game close. So the only really big play that got me out of the seat was Tyke Smith.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting moving forward. There's a lot of takeaways from today, and again, without overreacting, I think the overall narrative is going to be, was today more so on the Buccaneers just playing flat coming out of the bye week, or are the wheels starting to fall off? I think that the term that we had used before the bye week was they're starting to leak oil. They're a good team who's had to overcome a lot, but they're starting to leak oil in a lot of ways. You talked about complementary football. The Bucs have not played a lot of complimentary football this year. I think the best effort they had was in New Orleans, and that was even a frustrating day for the offense because you had a defense that should have had 2 more touchdowns on the board because of the Antoine Winfield stuff and the officials. We're going to get into that in another day. That's another conversation for another show. But your defense played well that day. Your offense couldn't get going. Even in the wins, 38-35 against Seattle, your offense was firing on all cylinders. Your defense couldn't get a stop. They've had some damn good wins this season, and you can't take that away from them, but what they haven't had is complimentary football in every single one of those wins. And that is, that's going to dig you a hole a lot faster against some teams than it is others, and we saw that today against New England. Richard T., final thoughts before I let you go, my friend.
Hang in there, guys. Patriots today, Bills next week, Rams 2 weeks from now. It's going to be a rough ride, but just pray for December comes faster than we think.
We'll make it. I know we'll make it. And you know why I know we'll make it? Because we've been through worse, believe it or not. We've been 3-6 at this time of year, Richard T. I know you remember it well. I know we all remember it. We talked about it on this damn podcast. The Buccaneers, at one point were like 3-9, and we were getting ready for our mock draft machine. So I'm glad that is not the case. The Buccaneers still have a lead in the NFC South, and they have 2 more tough opponents in the coming weeks. Going to be very telling how they perform over the next few weeks. But Richard T., we appreciate you, my friend. We'll talk to you soon. Go Bucs.
Go Bucs. See you later.
Oh man, last call for phone calls. If you'd like to get in on the action, 305-224-1968. The meeting ID scrolling by very slowly on your screen right now, 747-973-0150. I really don't want to overreact because when you are objectively looking at the situation the Bucs are in, they're 6-3. They have 3 good losses to, I don't want to say good losses, but they have 3 losses to 3 good teams. And they're missing a bunch of players. They're missing a lot of critical players. And you're seeing that affect the games in situations that you would expect it to expect the game. They're not as good at red zone this year. They're like 26th in the NFL in red zone efficiency because they don't have Mike Evans that they can just have body somebody one-on-one. They threw a fade route to Sterling Shepard a couple of weeks ago. We're not even a month removed from that effort. So let's just try and, I don't know, make it through the week without tearing each other to shreds. I don't think Todd Bowles needs to be fired. I don't think Josh Grizzard needs to be fired. I don't think Jason Light needs to be fired. I don't think the Buccaneers, honestly, I don't think the Buccaneers needed to put all their eggs in one basket at the end of the trade deadline. I'm not surprised that they didn't. I'm not relieved that they didn't either, but I can understand why they didn't. And I think from a team building perspective, 2 years from now, we'll probably be happy that they didn't, regardless of how this season turns out. It's a lot easier to say that now, but I don't know. One last call from the 708, wrapping things up with us. Who's this?
This is James Mance. How you doing?
James, how you doing?
Well, wasn't a good day today. I'm going through loss withdrawal as I usually do. Look here. Certainly. You were just talking about the fact that we're losing guys and our stars like Evans and Godwin, and we're 26 in the red zone and things of that nature. With all that's true. But we could have won today, and I've been on some other boards and talking about Bowles and the defense and all that kind of stuff. We started the game with a great drive, and just great momentum, and then they took their foot off the pedal, and momentum is such a critical thing at this level. Everybody's good, everybody. Can play. Even you see what happened with Buffalo today with a terrible Miami team. So any given something, but we were in the game today, and we just kept putting the offense in these awkward situations. We were always 3rd and 9 and 3rd and 10 and made it tough. Now that's tougher without your stars, right? And Baker. Man, I love Baker. I really do. And I really think he can be an elite quarterback in this league. But, man, the last 3 games, the first 3 games of the season, they were talking about MVP. But nobody's been talking about that the last 3 games because he's been kind of shitting in his pants a little bit. And I think he can turn it around. But, man, for a guy at his level to take a sack twice in those situations, I don't know if that's him. I don't know if that's Grizzard. I don't know if it's both of them. But at this level of the game, man, you can't make those mistakes and win. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I think it's all fair points. I think, again, getting that star power back, getting healthy is only going to help this team that much more. But player execution, it becomes much more nuanced week in and week out when you look at games like this and you look at an opportunity out of the bye week where you want them to come out fresh. They do come out fresh.
They did.
And then they just kind of let it fall away. I think it's a tough conversation to have, but it's the ebbs and flows of the NFL season, my friend. 6-3 is definitely not the end of the world. So
it's not bad. It's not bad. I'll take it. I'll take it. But the thing is, this was a winnable game today. It's like you say in the nuances, right? We were right there a play here, a play there. You know that it was a couple reads, in some of those possessions when we were punting, and they do the replay, and it was another guy wide open. I'd expect that from Mays. He's a second-year quarterback. He might not, get the reads right? But Baker, that guy got to get that read right. Don't go to the guy who's double teamed. Go to the guy that's open. But, again, the game is fast and it's moving. But, that kid Mays, man, that kid is the real deal.
Yeah. Man, and that's the thing about the Pats today, too. And that's where, if we're going to find some merit in the loss, I guess find it here. Not only do the Patriots have a real deal quarterback with the way he's been playing, the numbers will tell you that, but they have a damn good team. And Vrabel is a damn good coach, and they're going to be a contender in the AFC. They were the only team in the AFC East who won today. The Buffalo Bills came up short in Miami. Everybody else fell short. So, I mean, they got to be feeling pretty good about the momentum they have for themselves. But for the Bucs, I mean, it's back to the drawing board, and they're going to adjust and move forward. Hopefully they can try and get healthy in doing so. But we appreciate your call, my friend. We'll talk to you soon. Go Bucs.
Thank you, brother.
All right, let's get to one more call here from the 520. I appreciate you holding on for us. Who's this?
It's Josh again. I just had another quick question for you.
Go for it.
So everybody's saying all the fire everybody. What do you think about the strength and conditioning staff? Because we've had 2 years of kind of just injuries all over the place, and that was my only question.
Josh, I appreciate you, my friend. We will wrap it up with that. Go Bucs. Talk to you soon. I never want to be that person who puts a lot of merit into the idea that a conditioning staff is responsible for a spree of injuries, but it is a very curious case when you look at Tampa Bay and the case of hamstrings in particular. Acha Ibuka got kind of lucky, dodged a bullet. We could have missed him for more games. He had aggravated his hamstring, but gets a chance over the bye week to get healthy. He's missing time, though. We've got other guys missing time because of hamstrings. Ben Bredeson set to miss probably the next 2 or 3 games, at least with a hamstring. There have been guys whose seasons have ended because of a torn hamstring or just a pulled hamstring, knocking out a receiver for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. I think it's an interesting case. But to me, at this level, I don't want to be like Mr. Conspiracy Theorist about it, if that makes sense. I feel like a lot of it is speculative, and I just can't bring myself to do it. As good as it may feel, as easy as it is for me to be like, oh, they just need to fire the strength and conditioning coach, I just don't think you can account. I just don't think you can account for some of that stuff. And you know what? Here's a point. Here, let's sleep on this, and then we'll wrap up the show here. Something to think about. The field conditions were tweeted about multiple times today from different sources. People said that the Bucs field looked like crap today. And yeah, it's not on the same level as like a MetLife field with some of the non-contact injuries that they've dealt with up there. It's not like that turf. But the field condition was really, really bad. And not that is the main reason Ben Bredeson got injured, but field quality has hurt guys in the past. And if we're going to be speculative about anything, I guess that's it. But listen, people have every right to feel whatever way they want to feel. I just can't bring myself to do it. I can't. I don't think... Maybe there is. Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe this is just kind of the tribalism of the NFL at play. But I don't think there has ever been, at least from what I have seen on social media, I've never seen another fan base be like, we need to fire the strength and conditioning coach because, San Francisco. Like, I don't know if San Francisco is saying right now that we need to fire the strength and conditioning staff. I think that it's okay, and sometimes it is just true that it can be a bad year for injuries. And this year, it seems to be a bad year for the Buccaneers with injuries. And I don't know. That's it. I don't want to burden myself with that, if that makes sense. Seems a little trivial, but ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for today's post-game episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me, doing a show solo today. So thank you to everybody who called in. I greatly appreciate you guys supporting the channel. Mark Phillips, Mikey Kelly, It's Ed, Brutal as Bucs, Seminole Boy, Bill Camporis, Evolve, Outlier, I think was somebody else, Millard Thomas, Legend, Miguel R., Yancey Clark, Bucs fan in here, and of course, Richard T. from the West Coast, Brutal as Bucs, Christopher Cole, Pickle Dog, and Jay Cruz. Thank you guys. Anybody else that I may have missed, we appreciate you guys. Thank you again to Amazement717 for the $9.99 super chat. Subscribe to the channel for more great Tampa Bay Buccaneers content. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. You can follow myself, Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, Rhettakus. If you follow me, I will follow you back. And please check out the Rondé Barber Show. I have the pleasure of producing that show every single week with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers legend and the fine folks at WFLA. We've got new episodes every single Wednesday. So looking forward to hearing what Rondé has to say this Wednesday about this Buccaneers loss. Again, hopefully does not snowball. But Todd Bowles has had that effect as head coach. So you hope it doesn't become a trend. And I think a lot of that is contingent on this Buccaneers offense figuring things out. On to the next. Yes, Giuseppe, great point, my friend. On to the next one for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 6-3. I am your host, Rhett Matthew. Thank you guys again for hanging out with us today. Thank you to everybody who called in. And thank you to Amazement717 for the $9.99 super chat. We will talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.